welcome back to WOT Blitz, and today we're continuing my series of real tanks, real stories. We're going to look at two tanks, the Max and the Sturer Emil. Now both these tanks exist in the game of Blitz, but they also existed in real life. However, in real life, both these tanks were prototypes, and the Germans only produced two of each tank. And the first one they produced was actually called the 10.5 centimeter K18 Panzerjaeger Selbstfahrlafette IVa, also known as Max self-propelled gun. Now, whilst that moniker seems to belong to a Monty Python sketch, in German it actually means thick or fat Max. Innuendo notwithstanding, nothing untoward about the name. Now basically this is like a tank destroyer. Well, it's a self-propelled gun. It's like an artillery piece on a tank. Now the original idea behind the Max was actually conceived by Krupp in 1939, and it was meant to be a bunker buster. In other words, it was meant to sit a long way behind the front line and effectively blast the bejesus out of heavy fortified positions without the danger of it being shot in return. Now the Germans at this stage had a number of Panzer IV Ausf chassis going, which they believed was going to be strong enough to take the armament, namely the 10.5 centimeter gun. However, it needed major modification. I mean, firstly, the engine is in the rear, which is not good when you've got basically a self-propelled howitzer and you need the crew to be in that place. They moved the engine to the front, and then they basically ripped the tank around. They gave it some pretty decent armour on the sides that could stop shrapnel in small arms, and they put quite decent armour at the front on the glacis plate of 50 millimeters at a sloped angle of 15 degrees, which would in fact give you good protection. They then took the 10.5 centimeter Schwere Cannon 18, an artillery piece, I mean this is a massive gun, and married it to the hull of this new tank. And what they created was this, the Max. Now, they created two of these, and in May 1941, they were given to the Panzerjaeger Abteilung 521 Tank Hunter Battalion to commence combat trials. And with the start of Operation Barbarossa, they were sent to the Eastern Front in order to find out whether or not these two prototypes were going to be any good in actual combat before the German army ordered any more. Now, unfortunately, the combat trials did not start well, with Max No.1 catching fire and basically destroying itself before it even got anywhere near combat. Now, basically, it caught fire by accident, and what happened next was the ammunition caught and it just exploded. So they packed it up, shipped it off back to Germany, back to Krupp, who repaired it and transported it back by the first half of 1942, returning it to the Panzerjaeger Abteilung 521 just in time for the new German offensive called Case Blue. That was effectively the summer offensive for 1942 on the Eastern Front, which was the thrust down towards the Baku oil fields. Eventually it changed into Case Blue 2, which was the Battle of Stalingrad. Now nobody really knows what happened to the Max, however. There were two of them out there. There are no records of any surviving vehicles. In fact, there are no surviving vehicles of this particular model. If they were destroyed in battle, then it's quite normal for the Germans not to record that, oddly enough, because it was only a prototype. There are reports that it was sent back to Germany and turned into the Panzer IV Brummbär, which doesn't seem to hold any credibility. And what we do know is that the Panzerjaeger Abteilung 521, when it eventually did get to Stalingrad, a Max was not on its order of battle. So we do know for certainty that it did not see action in Stalingrad. In fact, the picture you're seeing now is the very last known photo of a Max. The soldier over the barrel is unknown. It could be a German soldier, it could be a Russian soldier. We know that Russia has no surviving Max vehicles. What is interesting, however, is the kill marks on the barrel. Goes to show that it was quite an effective combat machine, despite the fact that there's not much known about it. However, we do know that the Panzerjaeger Abteilung 521, when they did get to Stalingrad, did have some SPGs, such as the Marder 2, and also two of these, the 12.8 centimeter Selbstfahrlafette Ausf VK 30.01 Henschel, also known as the Sturer Emil, which basically means Stubbon Emil. Now, whilst this tank bears a resemblance to the Max, it is a completely different sort of tank. Again, only two of them were built, both of which were prototypes. Both of them were initially designed in 1941 and produced in 1942. They both were sent to exactly the same battalion as the Max, namely the Panzerjaeger Abteilung 521 on the Eastern Front, just as they were getting to Stalingrad. So it seems that Panzerjaeger Abteilung 521 was the general testing ground for all types of SPGs. Now, despite the fact it looks similar to a Max, it is completely different. This thing is not based on a Panzer IV. It was actually based on the Henschel VK 30.01 chassis, which was actually one of the designs Henschel was going to consider for the Tiger 1, oddly enough. And as you can see from this photo, it looks like a Panzer IV hull with Tiger 1 running gear. Now we know that the Henschel didn't actually pass the trials. It was further developed into this hull, which eventually led to the Tiger 1 that we all know and love nowadays. So Henschel's design didn't actually make it into a tank in its own right, despite the fact that most of the components are actually built, including the turret. And I mean, this was meant to be the prototype turret, which looks strikingly like a Panzer IV turret, but it's not. It was actually designed for the VK 30.01. But as I said, it never really got off the ground, so they put the chassis to one side and came up with the idea of marrying a 12.8 centimeter flak gun to it, which is this thing, and it's pretty big. I mean, this is the gun before the 88 flak, and there it is. There you can see. I mean, it's not a great picture, I admit, but you can see it's a pretty big gun. Now they're more commonly known as Flakzwilling, and here they are on one of the zoo bunkers in Berlin, which was one of these massive concrete bunkers, flak towers, so to speak, in Berlin. And these things were massive, and they're very potent, and they're very, very good flak guns. And they have huge armament. I mean, 12.8 centimeters is pretty big. And there you see they were posted to the four round parts of this flak tower. And I mean, that's a big flak tower, so they were pretty potent guns. There's not many remaining. There's this one here, so you can sort of get an idea of it. It does look like an 88. But this was made by Rheinmetall. So what they decided to do, well, we're going to take this gun and we're going to marry it to this Henschel chassis that has been produced and we've got no use for. And they came up with this, the Sturer Emil, which is, as you can see, the Henschel chassis and a massive gun on the top. Now, I admit it looks similar to a Max, but it really isn't. It is completely different, guys. Now, two of these were built, both of which were prototypes, and as I said, they both ended up in the same place, namely with Panzerjaeger Abteilung 521 on the Eastern Front, just as they were getting to Stalingrad. And they both had interesting nicknames. One was called Max and the other was called Moritz. The thing is, not much is known about the combat history of this strange tank. We do know they went to Stalingrad. We do know one was destroyed. We have a picture here, one with some kill markings on it, but we don't know much about it. And we also know one was captured by the Soviets at Stalingrad itself. So it didn't seem much operational history, one battle in fairness. There's hardly any pictures on this thing. There's no video on it. And we don't actually know, as I said, that much about it. But we can see from this picture here, it seems to be, if those markings are correct, a pretty potent tank indeed, because those markings show 31 kills, which is pretty spectacular considering its very short service space. This is the captured vehicle that was captured by the Soviets at Stalingrad, and whilst you can't see the markings here, this was the one with the 32 kill markings. And it's still in Russia. That's it there. That's a photo I took when I visited the Kubinka Tank Museum. It's a big tank. It's spectacular to see. It's interesting, and you wonder, how potent this thing really would have been. I mean, it is colossal in real life. And unlike the Dicker Max, we do have a surviving example. So that has been the Dicker Max and the Sturer Emil. Both prototypes, both interesting tanks, both served in the same theatre of operations with the same battalion, and both had differing fates. Two tanks that are very unique and very different despite their looks. Anyway, I hope that's been enjoyable. I've been Fugit, that's been the Dicker Max and the Sturer Emil. By all means, if you like the content, comment, like below, and even subscribe, because it's a nice thing to do. And until next time, I will say to everybody, stay safe out there, and have fun and be happy.